Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Beyond the Barbell podcast. I'm super excited. I am here today with Nikki Haas, who is an international experienced 500-hour yoga teacher. So today we are going to pick her brain a little bit, learn about yoga, learn some stress management and relaxation protocols that we can implement into our day-to-day routine. And I'm going to kind of hand it over to her so she can introduce herself and tell us a little bit about herself. So, Nikki, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much, Ashley. I'm so excited to be here to talk to you all about yoga things.
Yes. So, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, your background, what drew you into yoga, how did you find yoga? A little bit of background.
Okay, so hi everyone. I'm Nikki Vincenti Haas. I am the yogi entrepreneur in the Hudson Valley area. I have been a yoga practitioner, so practicing yoga for about, 12 to 15 years.
Wow.
And I have been holding space teaching yoga since 2015, which feels like yesterday, but almost 10 years ago.
I know, that's crazy.
So currently I am teaching yoga at Marist College, where I have a couple of courses there teaching.
Wow.
Yeah, it's so amazing. Getting to teach, college kids self-care in the form of Yoga 101, meditation, restorative yoga, as well as athletic yoga. As I train there athletically as well. Super cool to be able to see different bodies after they've been, practicing different athletic sports like the row team, the basketball team, the swim
Oh,
team.
yeah.
And yeah, so I do that. Aside from that, I have my own business, Nikki Haas Yoga, where I teach holistic workshops. I travel and teach holistic workshops in the Hudson Valley, tri-state area. And I am also a yoga retreat leader. So I take people to the Caribbean
Ooh.
and to the Hudson Valley. I'll be in New England next year, and just I love to hold space for a little bit of time, because that's when the real transformative work happens. But yes, I am a big advocate for yoga, as it's changed my life, and I love watching it change other people's lives as well.
That's awesome. So you started out more in the traditional space and really has morphed into so many different cool avenues. And I'm sure maybe if you think back to 2015 when you started, did you think that you would be, employed by Marist, which if you're not from the Hudson Valley, that's a very large, I think people know of Marist College, right? Very large college right in our backyard, kind of. Did you ever think that you would be on their staff doing yoga with collegiate athletes? Now you're on the roster as a teacher, right? People can sign up and take yoga for credits, right? Towards their degree. Did you think that that's where you would end up?
Never in my life did I think I would be this yoga fitness teacher or a professor. That's such a weird label to take on.
Yeah.
I wandered into a yoga studio like anybody else, just to try out a new style of yoga, or of fitness. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
For me, my gateway drug of yoga was hot yoga, for sure. I had a friend who was like, this is really challenging. And, I always struggled with being in the gym. I never really knew what exactly to do. I'd go to the gym and I'd just be on the treadmill, right? Because that's what everybody was doing.
Yes, the safety net.
Right. You wander into a place where everybody's sweating, and I'm like, okay, let me just stay in my own lane, literally on the treadmill. So I went into a hot yoga room and rolled out my mat. And from my first class on, I was hooked. It was so incredibly challenging physically. But more importantly, I started feeling different mentally.
Yeah.
And when my mentality started changing, I just wanted to start to deep dive into other styles of yoga. So after the hot yoga came vinyasa yoga, which is very, it's this dynamic style, cardiovascular building
Okay.
yoga where the movements are attached to a breath. So you will inhale, do something, and exhale, do something. And
Okay.
hot yoga is very disciplined and it's always the same class whenever you show up. There's this idea that within the repetitive movement is when you build the mental grit, especially when it's
Mm,
104 degrees.
yes.
So the switch up to the dynamic and unique aspect of vinyasa yoga was awesome for me because it's like, wow, I could be expressive in myself, and depending on what felt sore or where my body needed a good stretch, that's how I could practice.
Yep.
Um, that later led me to yin yoga, which was a game changer when I started weightlifting. Um, Yin yoga is really long holds when you are
Oh,
practicing.
yeah.
Yeah.
I've
So,
done this before.
oh yeah.
This
So
is
you think
challenging.
challenging isn't even, if I told you to walk, to run around a building, if I told 10 people to run around a building, right, we would all
Yeah.
be able to do it, but it might like take us a certain amount of time. Like maybe you, I don't know, 5 minutes, maybe me 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But if I told everybody, hey, sit in pigeon pose and I'm going to lunch and don't move, like
Yeah.
most people, that is really what starts to strengthen your mind is like, okay, I'm committed to stillness,
hmm
and stretching the deep connective tissue of the body.
Yeah.
Um, so that was another one. And then again, yoga nidra, yogic sleep, because I mean, I'm a busy mom entrepreneur and I could definitely use more sleep, and yoga nidra just changed the game when it came to that. So those are my four favorite styles.
That's awesome. I know I can speak to, so definitely not a yogi by any means. So I'm like excited to have this conversation with someone that obviously is, right? But I have taken Nikki's hot yoga before when she was teaching at and I can't remember the name, right above oh my God, right on Raymond Avenue. Help me
Oh,
out here.
Street Yoga. Yes, I was there
Oh
for
my
quite
God,
some
thank
time.
you. My brain
Yes.
is like, and I have to say, I haven't been to your new spot where you've been teaching out of lately, but she always had the best playlists, which is really what I love hot yoga as well. But I also really enjoy good music and can appreciate good music. And oh, I don't know what I just hit. And Nikki always played like just like great, like old, just like songs you wouldn't necessarily think would be in a yoga classroom, or at least what I was used to. So I really enjoyed that like personal touch and flair that you kind of like brought to that class, because it was like you said, you're holding these positions. It's the same class every single time, right? So for someone that's like yoga is not their main source of movement or necessarily something that they love, but it's something I knew was really good for my body, right? So I would show up, but I knew that like, okay, there's no bypassing the parts of it that I don't really like because it is the same routine each and every week. But you get better, just like with strength training, right? You keep doing lunges, eventually like they still suck, but like you get better, you get stronger, you can hold the positions longer. So it was like a new challenge. But like I said, could really appreciate that like at least there was a good playlist along with it, because it just like helps me be present and not focus on like, okay, I'm like over this and I want to move on to the next thing, which is very much what is hard for me in yoga is like the mental aspect of it. And like you said, like it really is, it's very much physical, obviously, but like the mental strength and resilience that I feel like you get from it is really cool, and like nothing else that I've ever done. And I've, played a lot of sports, done CrossFit, weightlifting, all of the things, and it like is very, very unique and different and challenging in a very specific way. But I think that like everyone, like you said, can benefit from some type of it. It probably just is a matter of like anything else, figuring out like which one you enjoy the most that you can show up and do repeatedly.
100%. And I definitely, when it comes to the music, right? It's yoga in itself makes you feel a little bit more connected, because if we're holding a stretch and I don't want you to move, and that's truly how you practice the asana, which is the physical aspect of yoga, is you want to make sure that you get to a posture and you feel comfortable in the posture. And comfort doesn't necessarily mean it's easy. It means
Yeah,
that
definitely doesn't mean that.
no, it just means that it's sustainable for you, right? We
Yep.
all squat differently, right? Um, so you have to get comfortable there. You have to commit to being there and being led by the teacher, which is, it's such an honor to be a guide and to show people like, hey, you can push through these barriers and these walls. And
Yeah.
then lastly is the breath. I mean, how many times are we connected to breathing, and we do it all day long, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Even right now, as I'm talking to you, I have to like remind myself, like, take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Because we get so busy in life, just moving and grooving. And, you know, in this culture of productivity, it's like checking off the boxes and how much can we get done. Yoga teaches us to slow down. Um, and for me, it's also about connecting to how I feel in each posture. So if I'm going to teach you chair pose, which is always like not a fan
I know
favorite,
that one.
right?
If you don't know what that is, it's basically like a wall sit, right? Without the wall. And
Well,
ideally, your arms are also in the air if you can manage to do that, which is where I fall apart and crumble. But yeah.
yeah, arms reaching up to the sky or reaching forward, and energy in the arms. So you want to actually like reach like you're reaching for somebody, but
Mm-hmm.
relax your shoulders and sink into the hips. And all of this is going on. And then I go, okay, I want you to stay there for a minute.
Yeah.
It's so much more fun when you're listening to Biggie Smalls.
Yeah. It definitely is.
It's so much nicer.
1000%. Yeah.
So I try to connect the movement, like the asana, with how I feel in each posture. And I'm, you know, big hip hop head. I love EDM. I love listening to like, you know, just music of like the 90s, early 2000s. So I
Yes.
always put that within my class, because it's movement medicine and we feel good when we listen to music. So why not just combine the two?
Yeah. I love that. And like I said, it was a very, I've dabbled here and there and taken classes over the years. And that was like a very fresh, and this what drew me honestly to come back, because I was like, okay, cool. This isn't like, and again, this is from like predominantly a weightlifter looking in, so different perspective, right? But it's yoga can sometimes, or at least like how I view it, sometimes would be very like stuffy, is the best way to describe it, or like uptight, where there was like no room for like laughter or like error even sometimes, because you know you roll up into a class or people that practice weekly, like they're obviously much more advanced than someone that like is like, oh, I'm gonna go take a yoga class today. And it can be a little bit intimidating, right? Sometimes it's like you show up to these spaces and it's like you feel like you can't like laugh at yourself, or if you fall over, like everyone's going to give you the evil eye, and it like, you know, so it was nice to come into again this type of space where you have room to like just like be there and be present, and also just like do your best and do what you can. And um it was much more relaxed, right? Which makes the whole experience, I think, much more enjoyable, and also helps me as like the outsider coming into this kind of space also relax and get some of the good benefits of like showing up to a yoga class, right? And not being so worried about like, you know, not doing as well as everyone else is doing, which again, like been to a few, you know, a handful of studios, not a lot, but, and it was like, that was always kind of the vibe. So it was like, I walked into this and I was like, oh, this is good. Like, this is like, I could see myself doing this consistently. And I did for a while, and it felt really good. So tell me a little bit about, like you said, you were weightlifting and then also kind of doing like, you know, some yoga at the same time. So like, what were some of the, and you're currently doing that now, right? So Nikki is in the Fit Like a Mother program, which I'm super
I
pumped about,
am.
and obviously practicing teaching yoga all the time. So tell us a little bit about like the benefits and what you've noticed in your own training from like marrying the two and doing both at the same time. Because I feel like just like sometimes with the running community, it can very much so be like very dogmatic way of thinking about exercise where it's like all one way and the two can't coexist. But I feel very differently that like, you know, people that are lifting weights also need to be working on range of motion, mobility, right? Because then you just lift better and you can lift heavier and all of the things, right? Better results, etc. So, but people are sick of hearing me say that. So I'm curious to hear like your take on that, being someone that like, you know, maybe was more predominantly a yoga person, but then has now blended the two, or vice versa, started off with weights, found yoga, you know, like how did that all pan out for you, and like what are some of the things, the benefits that you're experiencing?
Well, for me, I was practicing yoga. I started my yoga journey as in my 20s when my life was so much more simple and I could
Oh,
live at it.
yes.
I think back to like 27 with the the sweet life that I lived where, honestly, I was working full time and teaching yoga, but I just had so much space for fitness. You
Mm-hmm.
go on Instagram and you see all of these like fitness gurus, and it's like, okay, who has kids, who's married, who's juggling a mortgage, who has their own business, because that's the person that I wanna
Follow.
I wanna follow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not 20 something old me, because we know that like you said, that was like the only thing. All we had to do was like, you know, what's the Jersey Shore thing, like gym tan laundry or whatever the hell it freaking is. Like literally that was it though. And work.
1,000%. I would spend like my whole Saturday morning at a yoga studio taking, the morning meditation, the vinyasa class, and then the hot 26. And then I'd go home for lunch and do live my life. But
Mm-hmm.
once life got more complicated, which it was really interesting because for me, I took my first training. I was holding space for yoga, and I had this opportunity to actually go to India to train, where I felt really connected to go and learn, just because for me, yoga is, it's not just physical, it's mental, it's spiritual, it's all the things. So after my advanced training in India, I came home and life just started building on top of me. I started my own business, I purchased a home, and I got pregnant with my first son. So
Ooh,
yeah, all within like 4 months.
damn.
And yeah, and not even that. The home that we purchased was, I had to completely renovate it. It just felt like every aspect of my life was challenging. And then after having kids, it takes, I think for a lot of people, we get in a rut, especially after that first baby, where we just want to like nest and be home. We forget about getting back to ourselves, right? And like that self-care routine. So I'm so grateful for that part of my life, because that's how I found weightlifting. um, it was easy for me to be this bendy little pretzel when I was a vegan and living at the yoga studio and stretching and intermittent fasting. But now, factor in like breastfeeding and having the endurance to run after babies and hold all of the things that I'm holding up in life. Uh,
Yes.
I needed to feel strong.
And
So
that damn car seat, man. No one talks
okay,
about the
good.
single arm farmer's carry that you will do with a 20-pound baby in there.
Why is it so damn heavy? Like they
And it gets progressive overload in the most natural way, right? Because the kids just keep getting bigger. And I'm like carrying, we actually, I think both have a son named Luca, right? So carrying Luca to the car, and I'm like, bro, like you're so much heavier than you were last week. Thank God I work out.
Oh my gosh. I totally hear you. When I was 9 months postpartum with my Luca, I found out I was pregnant with my second. So there was a time in my life where I had a, like 30-pound toddler and that farmer's carry with a baby.
Yes.
And strength training made me feel stronger. And just like you said, there's many of us that feel intimidated at the gym and we go right to, the cardio machines. But being able to lift weights with those that are, like have 75-pound dumbbells to 5-pound dumbbells, you have to like get your mind out of your ego and just
Mm.
know that everybody is there and competing against themselves, essentially.
Yeah.
Um,
Same mission. They just like want to get better, want to get stronger.
right. So for somebody who's like, cleaning 175 pounds, 225 pounds, and they're feeling like super tight in their shoulders, it's a practice to kind of go back into the body and say, okay, I need to stretch and I can't power through this. I have to breathe through this and ease my way into it. So it's really cool to see like how weightlifting and yoga are so necessary when they're intertwined. But if you only do one or the other, you're either going to get like a really tight body with lack of range of motion and no mobility, or like a hyper mobile body that's super bendy and has no strength endurance,
Yep.
you
Yeah,
want
I
to
think they're both like so important. Yeah, no, I think you nailed it. And like I said, I see this very commonly with like the running community. I work with and have worked with quite a few runners, right? And it's like always the same thing with them too. Is like they want to just like run, 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 but like you will literally be a much better runner if you are also strength training. Like joints, muscles, bones, like they need weight bearing exercises. And like over time, like this is where I think like it's important to do like both yoga, right? And something like strength training, because like you need to also progressively challenge the body, right? And like yes, in yoga, like you can hold, maybe you get better at a position, right? You are able to hold like a deeper range of motion, etc. But there's no necessarily like your body weight is for the most part, right? Your body weight, right? So there isn't really any like additional resistance all of the time. Like eventually you probably like get to a point where, you're pretty good at movements, especially if you've been doing it for like as long as you have, right? Where it's like, okay, I need to also train my body in this other way where I'm applying a progressive amount of resistance over time, because your body is amazing and does a really good job of adapting to what you're doing, right? So like it's just, I think so it's just so important to do both. And like while I don't necessarily take yoga right now, although I'm like, okay, maybe I need to get my ass back in there. I like the hot yoga also, which I stopped when I obviously became pregnant, and then I just like haven't started again. But
right.
mobility is a big part of when I work with clients, right? It's always in like warm ups and cool downs, because like it just is, like you said, it's so important, and it'll make you better in both aspects of like weightlifting, yoga, and just like longevity, right? If we can like, if you don't
1,000.
use it, you lose it.
You don't use it, you lose it. And just like you had that experience with runners, when I walked into my first CrossFit gym, that blew my mind.
Oh, you
Watching,
probably had a field day.
I was just watching like, oh my, I can't believe that you're so strong in one aspect, but you take no time. I mean, 1 minute to stretch, that's absolutely nothing. I think about stretches like couch stretch, right? Within
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit, right? So sitting in a low lunge and then finding the stretch for the calf up against the wall. That one drives me crazy, because what about people who have knee issues? There's modifications for everything within yoga. And while yeah, you can sit in the postures of yoga so many times and not be able to progress. I mean, there's always something deeper that you can move to, maybe not in flexibility, but also in strength, like handstands,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Handstands in general, can a handstand in gymnastics, a handstand in yoga, and a handstand in CrossFit, right? All
Very
very
different.
super different.
Oh my
So
God, it's so different.
I will say like handstands were really challenging for me prior to weightlifting. When I started, throwing weight over my head, all of a sudden my body weight didn't feel as heavy anymore.
For
Um,
sure.
but then you go into the CrossFit at gyms and you see people doing eagle stretch, which is just basically putting your arm in a pretzel, right? And
Mm-hmm.
you see this stretch and people are sitting there huffing and puffing through it for about 2 or 3 breaths, which is more of like a like this shortness of breath that sounds rigid, and then they release it. But wait, hold on, you didn't even give your body a chance to relax,
Yeah.
rather than doing this funky pretzel and your body not aligning in the proper way, why not do a modification of just like extending your arm in one direction until you feel open, and then doing the same thing on the opposite side? You know, we have all these misconceptions of the body, like, one, the body is symmetrical. No way. I know that sometimes my right side is way stronger than my left.
Mm-hmm.
We, you know, we think about like the problem areas within the body, like, and how back issues, we learn from the generations before us of what happens when you don't stretch your spine. You know, I have so
Yeah.
many clients that I work with that are 80 plus, since I work for the town of Poughkeepsie with the senior centers often. And
Okay.
I see arthritis in the back.
Yeah.
You see people who were runners and just wanted to be lean and not build muscle, you know, like the 80s really, that
Oh yeah.
fitness
Big
era
time.
was rough. And you see the
Yeah.
knee
As
replacement
small as you
thing.
can possibly be.
Yes. So, you know, I'm so like, it's so cool to be part of fitness in this time where we have body positivity. We have all types of bodies, and we have all types of fitness for different bodies, and seeing how we can find this beautiful balance, because self-care looks different, you know, for everybody, for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's an important message too, is like we can easily get married to like just one thing, but I think it really is like when we're talking about like long term and like being 80 one day and not having all of these things that you're describing, because I know I certainly don't want to have them. You know, like it really does take like a multitude of different things, and if you only do one thing and you're very shut off to the opportunities that other practices can present into your life, like you end up with probably some type of issue down the line, like you said, lack of mobility, you know, maybe like arthritis in one particular area because you never moved your spine, you know, in any other way, right? So now we're hunched over like this in our later years, right? Because we've, you know, whatever. I just think that, you know, one important message for everyone to take away from today is that, like, yes, we need to follow programs and we need to follow plans. And it's like, we can't just like willy nilly do whatever, right? When it comes to like the strength side of things. But like, it is also important to include other types of movement into your week. Like if, you know, if you have space, and that may look like having to cut back in one particular area to make room for the time to do something else that's also really important. Right. I think like you said, it's got to be kind of a blend of everything if we're talking about like setting ourselves up, our future selves up for the best possible later years in life.
Totally. Because too much of anything isn't a good
Yeah.
thing. I mean, for anybody who's even listening to this right now, notice if you're sitting up straight.
Yeah. Like me as I'm
Most,
leaning.
most of us are always like leaning, and not calling anybody out, but whoever's listening to this, I'm sure just sat up like another inch.
Yeah.
Or if you're listening, are you clenching your jaw right now? So many of us clench here, round our spine. And you know, it's wonderful to have these physical routines for the purpose of health, but think about what we're doing the rest of the time. uh,
Yes.
you
The other
know.
23 hours.
Yeah, exactly. I know I'm working out for an hour a day, but the other 23 hours, you know, imagine if you could have a breathwork routine, which literally can take a couple of minutes a day, but could be a game changer in your day when it comes to stress, or a game changer in your lifts. I mean, incorporating breathwork to your lifts, to running, to yoga, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Breathwork is a massive aspect of yoga, and something that has the power. It teaches us how to calm ourselves down.
Yeah. Which is a good segue, because I do want to pick your brain and have a like tangible takeaway, right? Because yoga obviously being something that usually you're like watching the instructor or you're listening to like the cues that they're telling you. So like we obviously, it's hard to do that on a podcast. Um, but I do want to give the listeners some type of like tangible takeaway, and being like you said, we are very much still in the like hustle bustle, like go, 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 go type of living. And I think we're like trying to come out of it a little bit, or at least some people are. And again, I don't think it needs to be so far the other way. I think it's got to be, we got to live in the in between, right? Where we're like hustling and motivated, but also like taking time to like rest and recharge and managing our stress better, right? Which is like where I'm getting at. And I see so commonly this is like one of the hardest areas for people, and like an area that needs the most work when I work with people one-on-one, right? They hire me, for example, to be like their nutrition coach, and they're like, all right, cool, Ashley, just give me macros. And I'm like, no, like yes, but no. Like there's so much more to your nutrition than just like following a set of numbers. I'm a
Are you
very like,
talking about me right now? I'm just kidding.
no, I'm not. But I have a very like holistic approach, right? So there's so
Right.
much more to it. Like, how are we managing our stress, sleep, environmental factors, like literally like so it's so much more than just like a set of numbers. That is like very like the cherry on top of like we got a lot of other things to cover and usually improve upon before that even matters, right? So my long-winded explanation of that is like, can you give us some type of like relaxation or like some type of simple breath work or something that we could potentially implement when we are catching ourselves, maybe like we're really stressed out at work, and before we, hit up the vending machine to help calm ourselves down, like maybe this could be something that they can put into practice, instead, like, or unwinding at night. This is another common one, right? Like we were just like on buzzing around a million miles an hour, especially if we have kids, and then it's like, okay, 9:30 p.m., close my eyes and expect to fall asleep immediately. So like something that we could maybe plug into our day-to-day lives in either one of those scenarios. I think that would be helpful if you have something that.
Absolutely. I want to just really touch on the fact that stress is it's just taking over.
Mm-hmm.
So many of us just live in a constant state of stress, and within the realm of holistic health, stress is the root of all disease. So if we could do our best to confront that problem, because I think everyone has an issue with feeling stressed, we maybe first commit to disconnecting, right? While we have our scheduled time for workouts, our plan for what we're going to be eating, the family time that we're trying to squeeze in, the social time, if we get any, that we're trying to squeeze in.
Yep.
Can you dedicate 10 minutes a day for stress relief? And for those listening, I mean, you might think you're disconnecting and de-stressing, but if you are at the end of your day scrolling or
This is a
on,
big one.
oh my gosh, scrolling. So we're being mentally stimulated on social media that's just showing us, the beautiful aspects of everybody's life and not the fact that everybody else at 10 p.m. is just sitting there scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
If you're sitting there scrolling, if you're sitting there Netflix and chilling, right? You're on the couch and you're watching something on TV. Isn't your mind still being stimulated? When do we ever shut off our brain? So my biggest advice when it comes to that is do something that allows you to disconnect. I love to shut my phone off at the end of the day. Like I turn it off. And that's a beautiful way for me to not have something that's dinging me or telling me to do something or notifying me of something to look at.
Yep.
Aside from that, turn off all the electronics at some point in your day, whether it's when you first wake up or right before you go to bed, and just lay on the ground if you can and listen to your body, closing your eyes and counting how long it takes for you to inhale. And I guarantee you the first breath is going to be very short just because we're so used to moving quickly. So
What's next?
Yeah, it's just most of us are 3 in, 3 out, and we keep moving, especially New Yorkers because we like to speak fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
But count your breath and then try to dedicate 6 counts. You can breathe into 6. Now try to exhale to 6 and do that for a minute, just for 1 minute, and notice how different you feel. Breath work
Yeah.
is so powerful. And there are so many different ways to practice it, but sometimes it's just disconnecting, holding yourself, noticing how you breathe, and being connected to your heartbeat,
Yes.
unclenching the jaw, relaxing the shoulders, sitting up tall. Now you can be better prepared to do your skincare routine and go to sleep, you know,
Yep. Yeah,
versus
I think that's a great one because like you said, if you can't necessarily lay on the floor, like I tell clients, I suggest this often too, like box breathing, right? Which I think is like what that kind of is. Um and it's something I suggest all the time, right? So this could even be put into practice, right? Like potentially if we're in the workspace, we just left a really stressful meeting, right? Like I know this is a common one for a lot of my clients and a lot of the people probably listening, right? Is like work stress is real. The one good thing about being an entrepreneur is like it's just me and the dogs and the baby, but like there's no one really like usually like pissing me off, right? Or like changing my mood. But for everyone else that is like working in an office, right? Or having to go in or just got off of a Zoom meeting or whatever, right? And you're like so worked up over something that just happened, taking that minute or two to do some of these deep breath work, like exercises or practice, whatever you want to call it, right? I think is really, really powerful. And you will notice like how, like you said, your heart rate changes, you're maybe a little bit calmer, right? Like we can now, okay, go on to whatever is next, right? Because if we're at work, like, we still have to do whatever it is that we're required to do, but we're at a much different state of mind than we were maybe just like 60 seconds ago. And I think that
totally.
that's really powerful.
Well, even feelings, right? A lot of us walk around and it's like, I'm having a bad day. And something that really was a game changer for me was breaking down my day into like early morning, late morning, afternoon, mid-afternoon, evening, and saying I'm having a bad early morning versus like the whole
Yes.
day,
Ooh, I
Um,
love that.
yeah, because so many of us are just like, oh, today's a bad day for whatever reason. Um,
Mm-hmm.
our feelings scientifically only last for 90 seconds. You could feel
Wow.
mad right now, and that's going to go away in 90 seconds. So if you catch yourself feeling upset, what's 90 seconds at work when someone's bothering you or pissing you off, where you could just, you know what, take the phone off the hook and breathe for 90 seconds? The world will still go on. Your baby's
Yes.
crying. Your baby will probably still be crying next to you. If
Yep.
whatever is stressing you out, it's still going to happen, but you can check yourself. And box breathing is beautiful. I always recommend 4 in, hold the breath for 4, 4 out, hold the nothing within for 4. Um,
Okay.
for anxiety, I love the 4-7-8 breath. That's one of my favorites.
Ooh,
Um,
okay. What's that?
so that one's really challenging because the first cue is inhale to 4, which is hard. Fullest breath to 4. Now
Oh.
hold it for 7, and then
Ooh.
exhale to 8.
Okay. That's a good one.
Oh gosh. At first, you're like, I can't do this. And then after a minute of doing it, you're like, wow, I'm so strong mentally. Why do I hype myself up that I can't do these things? Now I can go deal with whoever's stressing me out. Um, you know,
Back to the crying baby.
yeah, back to the crying baby,
I needed that last night.
try the 4-7-8 breath, girl.
Yeah, I'm going to. I think these are really great. And I think that's a good, I don't want to overwhelm people, right, with too much information, but I think she just gave us 3 really good practices that we can just try them out, right? Not everything always works for every person, right? And I say that with like anything, right? There's no one size fits all. So try them all. Try one today. I'm sure there's probably some bout of stress that we will all experience at some point in our day. It's at the time of recording this, it's only 10:15 in the morning. So the day is young, even though moms have lived like 9 lives by now. Use it, try it today. So like the biggest thing is like when we learn new information from anyone, right? As like I always try to challenge people to like implement it in some way, shape, or form immediately, right? Because so it doesn't just become another thing that we like yeah, I heard this thing. And then like we never use it because like it really does work, which is, Nikki just described to us. So my challenge to everyone today as we kind of like end and then we'll get some information from Nikki about where we can find her to work with her is like take one of these 3 breath exercises that she just described, be it at work, at the end of the night when you're getting ready for bed. I love the first thing in the morning. I really, really try to not roll over and immediately grab my phone and start scrolling, which is something that I have done for years, right? I try to take the morning to be like the first few minutes is just for me. Hopefully the baby's still asleep. Chris is definitely still sleeping. The dogs are still sleeping, right? So it's a good opportunity for me to like ground myself and prepare myself for whatever mayhem is about to explode in the next like 20 minutes. So like insert it into your life wherever it makes the most sense, but try it today. Cause like, just like with exercise, you don't use it, you lose it. It's like we learn and we get so much information on a daily basis that like, if you don't try and put, I think like some part of it into practice immediately, it can very easily become something that's just like in one ear and out the other. And we forget all about it. So practical application for some stuff that can really change your life from Nikki that I think is really important and that we can all use more of, myself included, instead of reaching for other things that we may in the moment feel like are helping us de-stress, right? Like smoking, alcohol, food, the usual go-tos of like, okay, we're trying to get some type of emotion out of these things, and something like breathwork can really just like steer you in a completely different direction. So hopefully that was helpful for all of you guys listening. Nikki, tell us like where we can find you if we want to work with you. What could that possibly look like? Give us some deets.
Oh, awesome. Yes. If you want to find me, you can follow my yoga journey on Instagram at Nikki Haas Yoga. That's NIKKIHAASYOGA.
Awesome. I'll write it in the show notes for people.
Yes, if you would like to come to one of my workshops in the area, I'm all over the place. I'm going to Pennsylvania this weekend, mostly in New York. I'm in Connecticut
Cool.
and Rhode Island, but NikkiHaas.com. And
Okay.
and you can, NikkiHaas.com. You'll find all my information there. But
Awesome.
take 2 minutes to breathe and to just connect to yourself. Maybe
Yeah.
challenge to go get your steps in without your phone today.
Ooh, I like that one.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that one because I'm definitely guilty. I take my phone with me and catch myself on my phone while walking when I should just be listening to what's around me.
At that beautiful baby. He's like right there. You know.
I know. I'm usually hopefully like praying that he's like asleep, but yes. No, that's a good one because I'm definitely guilty of that. And, although my business is on Instagram, right? So I want people to be on there. Definitely like we are all probably on there too much, myself included. So
Yeah.
I think that's a good takeaway for today. Thank you again so much for joining us and enlightening us about the world of yoga and just letting us know about all the things that you do. I'm very interested in these like retreats, travel. I love to travel. So definitely going to check that out. I'm intrigued.
Always in Puerto Rico. Yes. Always in Puerto Rico or the Hudson Valley. But you would like to join me in retreat. Yeah. I'm leaving actually in a month and I still have space. So come through,
awesome.
Girl.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And we will talk to you soon.
Thank you, everybody.